Well, good evening, everybody connected to Sutton United Football Club. How are we? My name is Greg Clark. You may recognise my ugly mug from previous videos, such as the Billy Gilmore interview and the interview we had with the chairman last week, or 2 weeks ago was that? Yes, it was. All the days morph into one during this lockdown period. So I hope you're all well on Thursday, the 14th of May. Very interesting times, of course. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world currently, but hopefully we're here tonight to bring a bit of a bright spark to your evening. But tonight we're not here to talk about me, definitely not. Tonight we're joined on SUFCtv by Seb Brown, the goalkeeping coach of Sutton United. Seb, hello.
Hi Greg, you right?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Very, very well indeed. How are you primarily?
I'm doing all right. I think I'm the same as just about everyone else. Finding it a little bit strange with everything going on at the minute, and not having had an end to the season. But on the whole, I'm healthy, safe, and plodding on. I just got back inside from doing our 8 o'clock clap, so that's a nice bright spot to the week.
That's great to hear, and of course we give our thanks to the NHS staff who are working tirelessly to see us through this horrific period in our lives. So yes, thank you very much to the NHS. So yes, I suppose on that topic, we're all going through the same thing. We're all very much in the same boat globally when it comes to trying to deal and cope with the everyday vagaries of coronavirus and the impact it has. How have you been keeping yourself busy, generally speaking, Seb?
I think the first probably 2 or 3 weeks was quite a nice break. Obviously everyone knows how busy a National League season can be, and how hectic it can be. But I think the first 2 or 3 weeks almost felt like a natural end to the season, maybe without the obviously the conclusion of the season, but it felt like a typical end of the season would feel. So that first period was actually quite a nice refresher. Obviously, there were the limitations of not being able to go kind of away on holidays and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's nice just to have some time to yourself. I think since that sort of, I guess, 4th week and onwards, it's been a case of trying to figure out where everything lies in terms of planning for next season and how the season's going to end and things like that. So that side of it comes in, but from a personal level, it's just been kind of taking advantage of all the content that's out there at the moment. I think we're obviously from a coaching perspective, there's a lot of people who've got extra time on their hands who can put out new sort of ideas and presentations and things like that. And then obviously there's the sort of the general football related stuff, like the stuff you guys are doing and things like that, just to keep people with a bit of a contact with the game, really.
Certainly, of course, and let's be honest with ourselves here, Seb. You're not just any old goalkeeper, because you hold a Master of Science. Am I right in saying that?
A BSc I've got. So not quite. I didn't quite go the full hog yet. I don't know. Maybe one day. Quite happy to leave my studies in the past for now. But you never know. You never know when it might come in useful. To be honest, when I did the degree, I wasn't sure whether I'd ever sort of use it. It wasn't when I was playing, coaching wasn't really on my radar as such. I think it's only when I sort of ventured into the real world, if you want to call it that, and realised how much I miss football, that I actually thought a lot of the things that I've kind of been doing and the skills that I've picked up do transfer quite easily into coaching. So I'll give it a crack, and then sort of 4 years later, here I am. So
fantastic. Well, I think you belong to a very, very small band of goalkeepers who actually take their academia seriously. Maybe I'm being a bit disrespectful to the community of the fraternity of goalkeepers, but maybe you could be the pioneer, the iconoclast in this situation. Seb, we never know.
They say we're all a bit crazy. I guess I'm just crazy in that way.
Fantastic. So, going back to the football you were talking about there, of course, you're trying to do things to distract from the fact that you don't have that match day buzz or that carrot at the end of the week to look forward to. What is it you miss most about match day?
It's probably quite a strange thing, but I think it's just the buzz of it all, the sort of the fact that you've worked that whole week towards the Saturday and getting 3 points and everything you've done, especially from a coaching perspective. It used to be amplified a bit more from the playing perspective, but even from a coaching perspective, it's a case of you plan as a group and you deliver that plan to the players throughout the week, and then it's almost a test of how well you've done in preparing the players for the Saturday. So I think just the kind of the buzz and the anticipation, and then I think the 90 minutes can be stressful, but then you reflect on whether you won or you lost, and try and tweak things and go again. So it's just I guess the overall buzz, and then you get it all again either on the Tuesday or the following Saturday.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like we are, as a country, we're very much used to having a Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I mean, every day is dominated by football. You look at BT Sport on a Monday, and there's going to be some Vanarama National League game on there, and even a highlights show which I could watch incessantly for 3 or 4 hours. But, I mean, because that's how well my life's going right now, Seb. But but yeah, so I think we're all missing that kind of buzz at the end of the week. But yes, I suppose as a media team, we too find that very, very difficult. But I mean, that's just the match day currently. But it will come back, and let's pray it comes back sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, we're here to talk about yourself, and I should not start talking about you without touching on your career as a whole. So your career kicked off down the road from me. Actually, I live in Ealing Broadway, so Brentford's my local team. Actually, how did you start becoming a scholar at Brentford? Was it something that, because you started off there at what age?
Yeah, I joined there as I left school, so I joined there at 16 as a YTS player. So I'd done a year at Watford as a schoolboy, and then didn't get a contract there at the end of that, and then ended up going on a couple of trials. I went on trial at Wickham, I went on trial at Brentford, and it just so happened that Brentford were looking and liked what I'd done, so they offered me a scholarship there. So it was actually it's probably one, when you look back, your sort of youth team days, and as much as you're doing all the jobs that no one wants to do in terms of like cleaning the boots and cleaning the training ground and painting the walls and stuff like that, you look back and you go, that was actually pretty good times in your life and in your career, because it's that camaraderie building. You kind of not lose a little bit of it, but when you do sort of become a pro, you've almost reached a bit of the mountain that you want to get up. So it's that you lose that aspect of the journey that got you there. So I think a lot of people, when you talk to them, they reminisce quite a lot about their sort of youth team days and some of the escapades and stuff that you get up to as a sort of 16, 17, 18-year-old lad in a football club environment. So I had a good time there, and then I did a year's pro at the end of that, where I played a Johnson's Paint game in the first team, but for the most part was sort of on the bench or out on loan. So it's overall a good experience. It's a brilliant club. I mean, from seeing where they were when we were there, or when I was there, to where they are now, is like a totally different ball game, really. I mean, it gives hope to any club of kind of what should we say? Not like massive club in terms of finances and stuff like that, but if you have the structures and the processes in place, and you have a little bit of a backer, then you can kind of, the world's your oyster kind of thing. So
completely, yeah. I mean, you were saying a few minutes ago about maybe when you were an apprentice, you were like asked to do the kind of more menial jobs, such as painting the walls, cleaning the books. I mean, I've been to Griffin Park in the last 6 months. I think it could do with a fresh look of paint. I don't know where you're up to next week, but maybe you and I can secretly go down and paint Griffin Park.
We better get down to Griffin Park quick before they knock it all down.
Yeah, it might be a bit pointless in today's day and age, but yeah. But on that topic, where you are a youth team player, do you think that ethic and the ethics that the youth team coaches try and instill in the players, like, do you think that's missing from the game now? Do you think young players are a bit more pampered than what maybe they were even 10 years ago?
I think it's hard to speak from the elite levels and the top levels, because it's such a different environment. Obviously, when I signed at Brentford as an apprentice, they were in League One, or I think it was League One at the time. So it's a very different environment than if you were, say, going in to be an apprentice at Chelsea or an Arsenal or something like that. I mean, I think there were a lot of places, and I was probably at the age where it was coming to the sort of tail end of some of the horror stories of how things had been done. So there was that sort of element of child protection now. So we were still doing the sort of menial jobs, but we weren't doing some of the excessive things that maybe players had done sort of in the past. So I think we were probably that nice line between developing that ethic and sort of grit and willingness to do the sort of dirty side, but also without the negative kind of connotations that came along with it. I think the funniest thing now is when you speak to a lot of like youth team coaches and stuff, they're finding ways to try and sort of bring that side of the game back in. So there's ways to without sort of breaching those rules. So it's a fine balance, but absolutely it's 100% sort of has an effect on your sort of outlook and your life. I mean, it's hard to be too big time when sort of, I mean, I was involved, obviously the squads and stuff were a lot smaller back then, so I was involved with the first team when I was sort of 16, so I'd be on the bench for a couple of the cup games and then ended up being on the bench for a lot of the second sort of half of the season. But then when you go back into training on a Monday and it's, oh, you're with a youth team today, it's hard to be sort of a big time Charlie when you're stood next to a teammate that you've just been sort of washing up the first team's dishes with and stuff like that. And even when you travel to sort of first team games as a youth team player, you'd still be the one who has to sort of serve the food on the coach after and make the first team players a cup of tea. So it's hard to sort of get a bit above your station when you're having to do those kind of menial tasks. So I guess that's sort of the way that it grounds you, but at the same time, I definitely think it gives you a sort of a longer term outlook, and it also makes kind of getting to that sort of top of the mountain, if you like, of getting a pro contract even more sort of sweet, because you've done the extra stuff not only to get better as a player, but also to do that hard work as a sort of person and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you were saying there about you experiencing maybe kind of horrible stories and you witnessed some horrible things. You may have thought you escaped that. Then I've got two words for you. Terry Butcher. He comes in. Now, he comes in. You see this England legend. Of course, whenever anyone thinks of Terry Butcher, they reimagine the bloody face in the World Cup for England after beating Argentina. I could be wrong. But when he comes in, do you think you've made it?
He was a real sort of funny character. He was a very genuine person who obviously sort of loved the game. I mean, he was, even sort of then at the age that he was a very intimidating kind of stature of a man. But when you actually kind of had conversations with him and talked about development and stuff, he was very kind of open to it, and I guess maybe a little bit sort of ahead of the curve for sort of people his age in terms of understanding sort of youth players and things like that. But the couple of funny stories I've got when he was the manager.
This is what we're all waiting for, Seb.
Yeah, I've got. I was a second year apprentice. So I'd have been 17 going on 18, and I had a bit like I've got now because I haven't had a haircut in 8 weeks or 9 weeks, however long we've been locked down. But I had like quite long sort of curly hair, nothing too drastic, but kind of a little bit longer than what I normally have it now. And I ran into him in the corridor one day, and he said, "Are you going to get your hair cut?" And I sort of looked at him, thinking he was like sort of deadpan joking. I said, "Well, I wasn't planning on it. Why?" He said, "Well, you've got until next Friday to get it cut, or you're getting fined 2 weeks' wages." so at that point, I didn't know whether he was being serious or not. But I didn't really want to push that boundary with him, so I ended up getting it cut sort of the next couple of days to avoid losing my £45 a week scholar money. So that was the other, and the other sort of funny thing when you see him. Obviously, he's a big guy, he's a tall guy, but he's put his body through a lot of stress. Is probably the best way to put it. But when you watch him walk, and he used to wear sort of these black cotton tracksuit bottoms. And he used to walk, and it would look like his sort of knees were caving in like to each other. And you thought, oh, this is a guy who's been to hell and back like in his career. And you think, how is he still sort of moving around and doing all this? But then he'd go out before the lads while we were warming up and stuff, and him and Andy Scott would stand probably about the sort of width of the 18-yard box from each other, and they just ping balls. And Terry Butcher would literally just ping the ball to Andy Scott's chest, and you're looking at it going, how is he even managing that?
He can still be playing.
I mean, it can't have been the same like from when he was playing. So he's had to adapt this technique to suit how his body works now. But he could ping it like dead straight with pace at Andy Scott's chest, and I'm sort of looking at, oh my goodness,
how has he just done that?
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, it must be just so strange to have like almost like a mythical figure in like many of that particular generation. It must be very almost mythical to have a guy like him pinging balls into you to try and control. But yeah, I know Terry's a big fan of the show, Seb. So now that he's listening, I will confirm that you now have had your haircut many times in those years, if not maybe in the last couple of weeks. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, obviously your time at Brentford, you were there for 2 years. And what I would encourage actually in the live chat, if you do have any individual questions regarding his time at Brentford, Wimbledon, and of course Sutton, this is why we're all here, please do get in touch and I will do my best to relay them to Seb here. So perhaps Seb's finest moment in football was his time at AFC Wimbledon. Of course, when he's achieved club legend status now. And the reason for that is, Seb, you can take it away from here.
Well, I get enough stick for this one anyway. I'm sure Mickey Stevens and the gang will be on the live chat giving me some stick for this one.
Not quite yet, that's coming.
I often get accused of mentioning it too often. I think Nick Zanev brought it up in a Wimbledon interview that he did, that I don't shut up about it. But I was obviously part of the team that got promotion to the Football League, which was for Wimbledon was a very big statement in their club history. So I mean, that to be part of that was a massive experience, and to do that as a fan of the club it was something. I mean, that every boy's dream kind of thing. So it was a good time. Yeah,
I mean, obviously that was up in Manchester, wasn't it? That was up in the city. What was then? The Etihad, of course. And I always thought it was at Wembley until I did my own research, and I didn't realise it was up there. But
yeah, that's the one. If you can have a regret, that's probably the one regret, even though it's out of your control. But the Champions League final was due to be at Wembley, and the ruling states that you can't have a match any sooner than 2 weeks before the Champions League final on that pitch.
Yeah.
So unfortunately that meant that our playoff final was relocated up to Manchester, which stadium wise it's not quite the same, but at the same time you imagine the sort of extra supporters and the extra people who could have come and watched for a Wimbledon Luton final that maybe didn't get the opportunity to go up to Manchester to watch it. So it was the one thing that you look back at. But as I say, if you'd have traded me playing at Wembley and losing for playing at the City of Manchester and winning, I don't think I'd have traded you. So.
Of course, I mean, I don't think you'll ever need to buy a pint in Wimbledon ever again, would you? But in that sense, though, of course, that's a playoff final, and that's to get into League Two, the Football League. Given what Wimbledon had been through in the last 10 or 15, 20 years, and essentially been bought over by a separate club in a separate city. Could you feel? I mean, this is a question from a personal standpoint because I did follow the debate throughout the years. Did the MK Dons rivalry really come to the fore? Was that palpable within the club at the time?
I mean, obviously, everyone sort of has their own take on the story. I think if you're a Wimbledon supporter or an AFC Wimbledon supporter now, I think you look at it one way. That said, there's people who did support Wimbledon in their original form that did go and support sort of Milton Keynes. So it's a difficult one because the logic makes you think, why would you want to go and do that? But at the same time, if that's what you believed, then it's your right to go and do that. But I think within the club at AFC Wimbledon, everyone at the club and everyone involved with the club sees it as the kind of continuation. But at the same time, I think it's a delicate balance because the new club, if you want to call it that, has created its own memories and its own history off its own back. So I think we're getting to the point now where I think there's a lot of crossover because of the levels that the new club or AFC Wimbledon are playing at. So I think when we just formed and we're in the Combined Counties League, I don't think a lot of the players involved with the original Wimbledon, if that's what you want to say, were kind of paying too much attention. I think there was obviously the hardcore few, and there was some who sort of lent their weight to it verbally, but I don't think there was necessarily the same level of interest from sort of people, or I say people, probably players associated with the original club. But now, obviously, when you look at their sort of array of last managers, you've got three out of the last however many that had actually played for Wimbledon FC in the original form. So I don't think the wounds will ever be healed, and I think that's probably right. But you're also at the point now where there's a generation of kids at Wimbledon growing up, and that's all they've ever known. So it not gets watered down, because obviously there'll always be that history. But I think if you've got a generation of kids that are coming up only ever knowing that, it's natural that sort of a little bit of it dies away. So, but at the time, as I say, it was I think the biggest statement, because without wanting to kind of acknowledge the existence of Milton Keynes, but the biggest thing at the time, and I remember being a lot of the talk in the build-up, was kind of how the club had risen so quickly. Was kind of a justification. Because the most famous, or one of the more famous quotes that came out of the FA three-man commission that decided on allowing the club to move, was that I think it was the reforming of the club in any new form would not be in the wider interests of football. Which I think that not only have they made such a big decision, but then they've sort of rubbed a bit of salt in the wound with that. So I think the whole build up into that game was actually going, well, have a look at this FA. I mean, for a club that's not in the wider interests of football to get back to the Football League within 9 years with kind of taking 10,000 people to Manchester to watch a playoff game is kind of a big statement. I think that was more what it focused around at the time, really.
Yeah, I think if that game, that playoff final, showed absolutely anything, it was the fact that the town of Wimbledon, it's a very big town, very prominent in London. If that had anything, it had the potential to be a really, really big club in the London scheme. So, given the fact that day, what's going through your mind? You've saved 2 penalties. You're clearly the man of the moment. You're the reason Wimbledon are back in the big time, among the big boys, going to places like Notts County, going to places like the Bolton Wanderers again. Given the fact that's so unique, we all want to know how good the night out was straight after it. And did you get a pint with Mario Balotelli, no?
No, I didn't.
You didn't then, no? Who else did?
I didn't. I don't know if he was floating around. The couple of the sort of biggest memories from the night out. So we had obviously everyone's sort of friends and family went to the game, or a lot of people's friends and family went to the game. So we had a kind of buffet reception at the hotel we were staying at, where all of the kind of friends and family could come and sort of sit down, have their photos with the trophy and the medals, and sort of congratulate everyone. But I think originally Blue Square, who were the sponsors at the time, had put on a kind of an evening reception. But for some reason or another, we ended up sort of doing our own thing. But obviously, by that time, everyone's friend had sort of moved on from the hotel reception and come to meet up with the players in the town centre or the city centre. So it was kind of a mishmash of players and their friends and their family members who wanted to go out and celebrate. And Ben Thatcher was actually there. I think he was good friends with Simon Bassey, one of the coaches. So he was there, and we were in a bar, and a couple of my mates. Obviously, Ben Thatcher's got a bit of a notorious reputation in the game, and a couple of my mates thought it'd be a good idea to go and ask him if he could put his elbow up to their face and get a photo of him.
I hope he kept his elbows firmly to himself that night, you know. And I hope Pedro Mendes wasn't kicking about.
Yeah, a couple of my mates actually went up and asked for him to put his elbow next to their head for a photo, and I'm standing there going, "Oh my goodness."
Jeez, man, like I say, I mean, you forget footballers are just normal people who remember a lot of stuff, don't they? But in terms of, I also know that Mario was a big fan of the show, and he does send his apologies, Seb, that he wasn't around for a pint for that particular day. So yeah,
he's too busy paying his parking tickets for all his supercars, I think,
or inviting magicians round to his house, you know. But yeah, no, it's Well, moving on from that, of course, that's probably the pinnacle. I mean, would you agree that that's your pinnacle, or do you think that does any other moment in your career stand out as being the best?
I think that season was the experiences and the achievements that I kind of achieved that season were probably the pinnacle. Yeah, I mean, it was when I sat and sort of planned my like targets and goals for the season. I managed to achieve sort of all of them, but the biggest ones were obviously being a part of the team that got promotion to the Football League.
Yeah.
So that was a big tick. Also keeping hold of my sort of England C jersey, which I'd gone to Wales, I think in the September that season, and it was almost not a trial game because it was a friendly, but I played half and half with the late Dale Roberts in the end. So that was quite I mean, that was the only time I managed to meet him, but we roomed together and things like that. So obviously when the news came a couple of years later, it was quite a saddening blow. But
tough,
so I played that game. I think by that point Dale was too old to be considered for the tournament games or something along those lines. So it gave me the chance to get in. So then I played against Estonia away, which was a good experience.
Was that in Tallinn? Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been to Tallinn. I've been to that exact stadium. It's a really nice city.
Yeah, I think it was the same stadium that the Scotland game, actually, you'll appreciate, where they kicked off and there was no opposition.
Oh, of course. I mean, that's probably that's probably the only time Scotland's ever likely to win a game, to be honest. But,
so yeah, that was the stadium we played in. But yeah, I mean, we went there. That was a fantastic experience. And then, as I say, my sort of target from that point on was to keep hold of that jersey as long as I was eligible. So obviously, until I was too old to be considered, or we got promoted. So in the end, it didn't last that long. But the only sort of, I guess the disappointing thing was I'd played and probably been man of the match in the semi-final against Belgium. We won 1-0, and it was literally we scored after about 5 minutes, and then it was backs to the wall, defending from then on. But when I actually looked back at the team sheets and things like that, Thibaut Courtois was actually in goal for the Belgian team. Yeah, so without realising, it was actually quite a funny game, really.
Did he bombard you with questions about? Did he bombard you at all with questions about maybe, I don't know, whether playing for Sutton or Wimbledon at any point now?
No, I don't think we said too much together because I don't know what his grasp of English was like at the time. But no, yeah. I mean, then the final, I forget where it was due to be played, but we got through to the Challenge Trophy final. But it coincided with the week of the playoff final. So in the end, I was ruled out from a club over country, which I don't think happens too often in football. It's normally the other way around. But I couldn't play in the Challenge Trophy final because of the playoff date. So that was a little bit disappointing. But again, if you'd have offered me to play in that Challenge Trophy final or the playoff final, I know which one I'd have chosen. So those, I mean, they were the big experiences really for me. I mean, obviously then I played the next season in League Two, which is the highest that I played. Or in terms of a competitive game. So that was obviously a great experience. You noticed the sort of the difference in the speed and difference in the quality at the time. But I think as we go on, that gap's getting sort of smaller and smaller just because of the way that the players and clubs and stuff are filtering down.
Of course,
obviously, when we were in that league at Wimbledon, there was a lot more full-time teams in it, but it was still, for the most part, a mixture of kind of part-time teams and ex-league clubs and stuff like that. Whereas I think now it's kind of a well-held belief that you can't sustain too long in the National League on 2 nights a week. I think there's a way there's a reason why a lot of the clubs tend to move towards a kind of morning training schedule, even if it's just in terms of attracting some of the players from higher up the pyramids.
Yeah, of course. And I've got one more question before we eventually go into the live chat. You'll be glad to know there's a flurry of questions came in via the live chat. In terms of when you said you played for the England C team, did you play with any players who are now very prominent and big hitters?
I don't think that There was certainly no like Vardy's or anyone like that. I think Aidan Flint.
Oh yeah,
he was one of the centre halves. Callum, I think it's Callum McFadzean. It was a Crawley. I think he went to Burton. Kyle.
He's from Sheffield, actually. Yeah, actually, no, get it. From Sheffield. Yeah.
Kyle, we shared one of the cars that come to pick us up because obviously they do it from where you were sort of located. So he was at Crawley at the time, and obviously I was at Wimbledon. So we shared a car to the airport to go to Tallinn. So
nice.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. The best thing, or one of the sort of better things about that England C team is we had, what did we have? I think there was another 3 Wimbledon players in it at the time, because the sort of ethos of what the club had tried to do, from probably more so from just a financial perspective than anything else, was to go with kind of hungry young players. So it meant that quite a lot of ours were eligible for that side. So I think we had 4 in total. It was me, Sam Hatton, Steve Gregory, I think Max Porter as well. Max might have not been at the club, but he might have joined the following year. So we sort of knew each other through that. So yeah, it was nice to share those experiences, especially with, as I say, everything that was going on back at the club and things like that, because it's nice to share those things with teammates, really.
Excellent. So yes, that's a pretty thorough answer. That's what we're all looking for. So in terms of now, you'll be, like I say, very, very glad to know the live chat's been absolutely bombarded with some questions for you. You're a very popular man, I would say, Mr. Brown. So starting, of course, with Mike Nicholson. So he says, good evening, Seb. Good evening, Greg. When you are watching a goalkeeper during a match, are you focusing on observing the things you have been working on in training, or is it a more general view of their performance?
I think it depends what it's going to be. Probably the same with most of my answers. I think it depends on what goalkeepers and stuff that you're watching.
Yeah.
I actually did some work with Mike and his goalkeeper for one of his youth teams this season, and watched his goalkeeper during a game, and we'd actually been working because his goalkeeper was going into the full size goal, so we've been working on a couple of things related to that and how you sort of transition to the full size pitch. So in that example, it would be watching more to do with those things really, and those sort of specific details. But when it comes to watching like Jamie or Nick or whoever, or Ben on a Saturday, it's probably more of a sort of an overview of how they're performing within the team. So obviously we work as a staff on how we want to defend. And how the goalkeeper fits into that really, and then what things the goalkeeper's kind of responsible for, and are they ticking those boxes? So it really depends on a little bit more of what we're looking to get out from it. But I think on a general Saturday to Saturday view in the National League, it's a bit more of a general overview in terms of how the goalkeeper's performing, because I think again it links into that. Are we sort of looking at developing the goalkeeper or getting them to perform, or sort of a mix of both on that continuum? So yeah, really a bit of a wishy-washy answer there, but for the most part it'll depend on what we're kind of trying to achieve and what things we want to sort of look at.
Cool. And then you'll be also very, very glad to know that Mike Nicholson's line of questioning does not quite end there. He has concluded his line of questioning with a simple question: AFC Wimbledon 1, Sutton United 3. Discuss.
Well, it's funny because as a Wimbledon fan, obviously Sutton's got quite a big part in the AFC Wimbledon chapter of the history. Even to be fair, the earlier days of sort of Wimbledon history, when they were a non-league side, obviously the Amateur Cup and stuff like that. So there was a lot of crossover, and I think it's one of those teams who, even though probably local rivals, I don't think there's too much sort of bad blood between the two. I know that some of the comments about the pitch from the Wimbledon camp sort of displeased Doz and Bobby and Bruce, but I think for the most part, I think Wimbledon are a club that tried to do things as well as they could from a sort of an overall level, and I think Sutton are the same. So I think when you have sort of like-minded people in how you want to try and run something, it's hard to sort of facilitate that rivalry. But at the same time, I think that was, I mean, you might have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the only time that the two clubs have met in a kind of competitive fixture that's not been like the Surrey Senior Cup or London Senior Cup or anything like that. So it had quite not a lot riding on it, but it had quite a nice feel for a rivalry match. But actually, the funniest thing was when I saw the draw, I messaged Ross Warner straight away. He'd come in when I was at Wimbledon. Because he'd basically, I'd been told I wasn't getting a new contract, and Ross had come in for that season.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd known Ross before. We trained with the same coach and things like that, so we knew each other. He came in, we had a good year together. Really, it was an interesting dynamic because, as I say, you're there to push him, but at the same time, you already know your contract's not being renewed and things like that. So it was a strange situation, but the same sort of thing happened to Ross the following year at Wimbledon. I know it sort of it left him with a little bit of a sour taste in his mouth. So as soon as I saw the draw, I messaged him and just said, "Great draw for you. Like, good luck. Hope you get the result you want." And I think his reply to me was, "If we beat them, I'm going to knee slide all the way past their dugout," which was worth a chuckle at the time. But yeah, I mean, as I say, I touched base with Ross on that, and then I gave him a ring before the replay, and he just sort of said, "Actually, I think we've got a good chance here, and I think we can beat them." So when someone who's played in the original or in the first leg or first game says that to you, you actually think, oh, there might be a bit of an upset on the cards here. And then since being on the Sutton side of the fence, I've heard all the kind of glorious stories of the win and the party back at Gander Green Lane and stuff like that. But I think the funniest thing is I don't think anyone at the time could have pictured how the rest of the cup run would play out.
No, not at all. I mean, I think it surprised a few people. I was living in Glasgow at the time, a complete and utter neutral to the FA Cup, really. And I just remember the run itself. It just mesmerised even people. A lot of people north of the border too. So now, certainly to play a small part in that, it must have been amazing for everyone connected with the club. But so that dovetails quite nicely into the next kind of segment of the questions we've got for you. I mean, you've explained kind of how the move sort of came about there. What would you say? And Ahmed Noor has just asked this question too. What would you say has been your outstanding memory from being at the club?
Obviously, I came after all of the sort of FA Cup success, and I think coming into that setup when I did, we obviously the people who were there and the players and the staff had this massive high. But I think when you're actually there on a day-to-day basis, we weren't by any stretch safe from relegation. I think everyone believed that we would be, but at the same time, when you've got all these games in hand, you're just desperate to pick up points. So going into that environment, it was kind of a case of, well, we sort of need to get this job done.
Yeah.
And then obviously we did, but from there, just the kind of the planning process to go, actually, we're going to try and target the playoffs next season. I know a lot of clubs say that, and it's kind of a standardised thing at a lot of places. Yeah, we're going to go to the playoffs, and then at the end of the day, if you end up 13th or wherever, oh well, we didn't quite get there, but whatever. But this was quite a sort of a determined statement from the players and from Doz and Bairdy and all the people involved that actually we're going to make the playoffs this year. And I think that the way that season panned out, where we were sort of trading blows at the top end of the table, then we had a little sort of wobbly spell, and we were going, oh, we're going to get second or third and things like that. But I think just the overall finish to that season, as much as it was disappointing from the Boreham Wood game sort of side of things, I think when you sit back and take stock for like a club like us to get third position in the National League with some of the big league clubs or the big ex-league clubs in that division now with sort of massive budgets and stuff, it's a real story, really. So I think being part of that was a big achievement, and probably the best since I've been at the club. But
yeah,
I mean, the way, I guess it depends on your outlook, but every sort of milestone we check off is a big deal, because it means so much to the people involved, the directors, the supporters, and things like that. So obviously this year with a difficult start, I think there was people thinking, oh, this could be a tough one. And then by the end of it, to get to a point where, regardless of what happens now, when they conclude the season, we can sort of put our feet up and get our cigars out and enjoy the break as much as we can. I think Rob and Bruce will probably argue otherwise, having to deal with all the sort of financial side of things. But from an on the pitch perspective, sort of turning that around and getting to a point where actually we've done what people didn't think we'd be able to do from a sort of a staying up perspective on a reduced budget and with sort of a nucleus of new players, really.
Certainly, I think what maybe does get lost in the kind of consciousness of the National League, especially at Sutton, is that we had Bruce Elliott on about 2 weeks ago, and he was just talking about how himself and all the directors, the board of directors, take no penny out of the club. They do it all; it's all completely voluntary. They do it because they love the club. They believe in the value of the community. The value it adds to the community. It gives people, I think, something to do on a Saturday, And of course, he was talking about the ramifications of COVID-19 on the long-term viability of Sutton. Of course, most clubs are going through, every club's going through the same problems. But I think it's important, like you say, to reiterate that nobody does this for money. I mean, of course, the media team, my colleagues in the media team don't do it for money. So if they are paid, it's very, very meagre bonuses. So So I mean, that's important to remember.
I think that filters down into, I mean, when you read any business book or any leadership or coaching book, a lot of the buzzwords are kind of culture and environment and stuff like that. But I think when you read stuff about things start at the top, I think that the fact that Bruce and all the directors and everyone is, like you say, putting their own time and money, it's actually probably costing most of them money because they're paying to travel, they're paying to sort of get their tickets and the sponsorships and stuff. So it's actually sort of costing them money to be part of that. And I think that creates a nice parallel with sort of the supporters, because the supporters do that at every club. They're the ones putting their money in, and they're the ones that are at the end of their week paying to take the kids to the match and buy them a burger and chips and watch a game of football. So I think it sort of creates that sort of, I guess, egalitarian side of things where everyone is a little bit level. And I think the fact that, obviously, I think Bruce mentioned it, one of the meet the manager evenings or meet the board meetings, was how there's probably not enough made that the club is in theory owned by the fans. So I think that the fact that everyone feels like that, and then as I say, I think that trickles down. I know Matt's been trying to sort of put in that now we are a much younger side, so we have got to be a little bit hungrier and try and get the edges where we can get them. But even when Doz was there, we were little old Sutton, and the amount of times he'd say that in his interviews and things like that. I think every year we went to Tranmere, the amount of analysts they had went up by about 3 or 4, because he'd just tell the players, this club have got 10 analysts working on it, and we've got like Scott Monroe doing this and blah blah blah. So it was it was funny just to hear how many analysts each club had at the time, because that seemed to be the marker of how much money they had.
That's a symbol of resources, isn't it? We've got an analyst down here. Do you have an analyst? We don't. So
But no, as I say, I think that adds to the sort of feeling of success and shared feeling of success and the shared feeling of pain as well. I think that the one thing that, even when things weren't going well at the start of this season, I don't think you could accuse any of the players of not trying or not caring about the situation we were in. I think if anyone came to watch their training sessions, they'd see that there actually wasn't a lot of difference between the sort of attitude and intensity and stuff of the players at the start of the season when things weren't going well, but at the same time, compare that to when things were going well and we were on a really great run, there wasn't a great deal of difference. It's just a case of taking a little bit of time for ideas to go in, having a little bit of a confidence builder. Sometimes those turning points make a big difference, don't they? Like, you scrape a little 1-0 here or there, and all of a sudden you go on a winning streak or things like that just make a difference to a group.
Of course, I mean, part of, I think what contributes heavily to a successful team on the pitch is a very, very united team off it, and a funny dressing room, full of good harmony, good characters. Who are the real good characters in the current Sutton dressing room?
We actually I say we lost quite a few for different reasons, but we actually talked about this in the staff group. How sometimes if you take a Jamie Collins or a Dale Bennett or someone like that out, it leaves a bit of a void for someone to kind of grow into. And you look at like Harry Buteman now, who probably was a little bit quieter but when you got characters like Jamie and Dale, and even the seasons before like Downer and Norbert Bailey and all players like this who are really big experienced characters, it doesn't sometimes leave the players like Harry and some of the quiet players the chance to step up. And I think probably Kenny Davis has been really good at that. I mean, he was kind of the elder statesman, but while being one of the quieter ones, whereas I think now he's kind of almost like a father figure for the group. He's that kind of overseeing sort of player who's someone that can give a bit of wisdom because he's been there and he's experienced these things. I think that sort of leadership side of things is often undervalued. But I think obviously Eastie getting the armband after Jamie sort of retired was a real credit to him, because if you sort of saw him on a daily basis, he's like the class clown.
Yeah.
But then you come to a Saturday on the pitch and he's relentless. And I think Doz used to say it the best: if Craig Eastman's on form, we're on form. And I think that, without wanting to sort of do anyone else any sort of injustice, I think that's the case. He's right in the middle of the pitch. He's there to kind of get everyone on the same page and stuff. So he's obviously quite a big character, but it's funny just in the difference between him on a training week where he's like the jester, and then on a Saturday when he's kind of focused and determined.
Yeah, I mean, on that topic, I mean, of course, like it's important to mention certain characters within the dressing room, whether they now be former players or players that are still there. Of course, you were very, very close to Jamie Butler, who we should give a shout out to. I mean, he was there for many, many years. He was a key part of the team last year and the year before that. What would your kind of homage to him be, given the fact he's now departed the club for pastures new?
I think for Butts, it's, I mean, the legacy that he's kind of left behind of finishing third and having the success that we had is probably testament to him, because obviously throughout his career there's been the kind of people who said, oh, he's not tall enough, he's not this, he's not that. But I think when you actually look back at sort of his career and what he's achieved in the game, sort of the England seaside as well, he's played for England C and things like that, he's achieved a lot. And I think it was just nice in that first season to see us obviously as a team do so well, but then he got the plaudits of Player of the Year, which is obviously quite a big deal for most players, because it's your teammates that are voting for it, and you're getting that recognition from your peers. It's always nice to get kind of supporters player or sort of managers player or whatever the award is. But I think the one that you could, if you were to choose one that you'd probably covet the most, would be from your teammates and stuff. So to see him win that was a real real positive for him and for me. I mean, the funniest thing is he came to the club in sort of the right place, right time kind of thing. So the season he came was, we played, well, Ross had got injured for the end of the season before, so he was sort of getting nursed back into health in terms of limiting his minutes and limiting stuff like that. And we were going to play him 45 minutes and then swap him with someone else in the first pre-season game. I think it was Coventry. But then I think the person we were going to get in let us down. So it was kind of a case of on a Thursday, Doz was like, right, you need to find someone to play 45 minutes on Saturday. So I knew that Butts had been doing some training and things like that, and he messaged me, I think the summer or the sort of the end of the season before, just to sort of see what I was up to and did we need any goalies and stuff like that. So we sort of stayed in touch. I said, look, it's 45 minutes for you if you want it. Obviously, it's a chance you get in the shop window. Totally understand if you don't want to, because obviously there's a risk that you might get injured. But to his credit, he said, "Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'll come and get 45 minutes in." So I introduced him to Doz, and they actually sort of got on really well. I think they're both a little bit maverick in their attitudes and their sort of styles. I mean, when you watch Jamie play and see some of the sort of distributions and the saves that he makes, he's got that little edge to him. And I think sort of Doz was a little bit drawn to that. But yeah, so then from then on, I think that was the only one he did play for us. And then a couple of weeks later, Ross was sort of unlucky to do his ACL while he was out on a recovery run. So it was a case of, we've got to wait for the scan results, but we might be needing to get a number one in here.
Yeah.
So it was a case of, well, keep your powder dry. If you don't get anything else, we might be in touch here. So that was how we left it. And then when we got Ross's scan results back in, it was a case of, do you want to play a couple more games for us? See if you can sort of get to know the players and stuff. And he did really well. And from then, I think it was one of those. I left him and Doz to thrash out the
terms and conditions.
The other side of it. Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean, I've been lucky since I've been at Sutton to work with some real sort of solid characters and pros, and I'll include Ross in that. I'll include Ben Dzinski in that, and obviously Jamie. They've all got a real sort of professionalism to want to do what needs to be done. I mean, I think Jamie's he's an interesting character if you were to watch him on a training day.
I've met him a couple of times. Yes, certainly. He's certainly quite unique. Yeah.
He gets in sort of early, has his tea and toast and gets himself ready and stuff. Then he'll come out and train, and then you'll find him still in the dressing room at probably 3 or 4 doing all his rehab and his recovery stuff and things like that. So as I say, when you've got someone who's willing to kind of work that hard, that you have to give him a little bit back. And I hope that he goes away thinking that sort of we've had a good working relationship. I know that I've enjoyed it. But yeah, I mean, as I say, the achievements that he's had while he's at the club have been sort of all through his own hard work and how well he gelled with that group. Because I think that's the other thing that it's obviously easy to overlook is when you've got a character like Ross Warner, who has been with the club for, I think, probably 3 seasons at that point. He's quite a sort of big character in the group. The players know him, the players respect him. To come in and essentially challenge that, and although obviously Ross wouldn't have been fit for that first season, but you've almost got a 1 season audition to try and take his place kind of thing. So and in the end, the following season, obviously Butts was the one that played the majority of the games until his injury. So it was a real ding dong battle, I'll tell you that, between two good goalies. But again, the professional respect that they've got for each other. I think the picture, I've got it somewhere on my phone. I don't think either of them knew that I took it, but obviously I think everyone remembers Ross's keepy-uppy penalty against Leyton Orient at the end of that season. But in only a way that goalies can, I think when we went into the President's Lounge after to eat, that you had Ross sitting there like head in hands watching final score or something come through, and then you had Jamie just sat on the chair sort of next to him. and they're both kind of just like, they could have been talking, they could have just been sat in silence, but I think there's that kind of professional respect between them that if you're, I mean, we're all teammates, aren't we, really? If your teammate's done something like that, you're hurting almost as much as them. Probably not quite to the same degree, but I mean, you know how that feels, and you've been through that in your own career many times. So I think just that quiet moment of them just sitting on their own in the President's Lounge with their things of food, watching final score, it kind of summed it all up to me.
Yeah. I think ultimately, if you're a goalkeeper, you're only vying for one position. That's the only position on that team you can have. If you're a left back, you can maybe switch into central defence for if you can deputise there. But there's only one goalie in any team, so I think I mean, they do say goalies are a bit of a maverick personality-wise anyway. Like that's just the way they are. You look at people like Bruce Grobbelaar and Arthur Boric down the years, they're all a bit mad. So, I mean, that's Jamie's clearly been a fantastic servant for Sutton down the years, and we do wish him all the very, very best. So, yes, a few more questions from the live chat, of course. James King has kindly got in touch to ask you on a personal level, Seb. Now, don't take offence to this question. have you scored any goals in your career, like Paul Robinson?
I haven't actually.
Oh, you've not?
No, I never really. I mean, I never got that lucky bounce that some of them have got. Like you say, when Robinson caught his clearance sweetly and things like that. But at the same time, I went up for maybe 3 corners in my whole career, and I think every time they took a short corner, which was about the most infuriating thing.
I mean,
ever.
they definitely saw you want to lurch into the box, didn't they? In that sense.
No, yeah. So you've gone through that effort of looking over the bench, getting the signal, running up, and then just as you get into the edge of the box, they take it short, and then get like dispossessed, or it goes out of play, and you have to then sprint all the way back again. So that was my sort of the closest I probably got, was actually getting to the edge of the opposition box. But yeah, never any real chances of getting a goal. Luckily, that wasn't what motivated me as a kid, so I'm not overly worried. I was more interested in keeping them out of the net than putting them in.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I mean, that's ideally what the remit of a goalie should be anyway. So you're sticking to your principles, very core principles there. So yes, a few more from the floor actually. Sohail Sahi's got in touch, and he's asked you again on a personal level. When a goalkeeper tips the ball around the bar or post, do you ever think he should have caught that?
I got asked enough times by Bairdy when we were working together. Do you not think you should have caught that, or do you not think you should have done that?
Yeah.
Again, I mean, obviously going back to my first answer to the live chat questions, I think it really does depend. I know I get a lot of stick amongst the staff for maybe sticking up for the goalies a bit too much, but I always think if I don't, who's gonna? But that said, I mean, even Doz and Bairdy, as much as I joke, and Matt and Jason and Mickey are very sort of understanding of what a goalie has to be able to do and what sort of stresses and stuff they're under to do that. So I think the goalies that we've had have been quite lucky in that regard. But at the same time, I think it's the same with any position. You've got to know your own game and produce to the level that's required. Otherwise, you're not going to play, whether that's a goalie or whether that's a centre half or right back or centre forward. I think you have to hit those minimum standards. But there are times. I mean, obviously, there's a lot made of modern day goalkeeping and tipping and punching stuff away. But until you're actually behind the sort of the end of the flight of the ball to see how quick it's coming at you, it's hard to make a real sort of objective judge. I think a lot of what I try and do is put. I mean, again, I've been lucky to work with experienced heads really, and people who've played a lot of games. So I almost give a little bit of trust to them to say, well, look, you made the decision, and then you get it wrong. We'll decide, or we'll sort of argue the toss afterwards and whatever. But I think at the same time, they're the guys that are out on the pitch, that are seeing the ball and the way it moves and the way it sort of goes through the air and stuff like that. They're the ones who've ultimately got to make that call. And I think we'd all rather someone tip a ball they might have been able to catch over the bar than try and catch it and it slip through their hands and go in. So it's a tough one, because obviously it'll vary. But yeah, I do get a bit of stick from the staff of sort of being the defender of all.
I mean, it's interesting just because, like, see, this has just popped into my head there. And again, I don't mean to demonise goalkeepers, because I do appreciate it's a very lonely place if you're not doing too well. But see, do you ever look at like Champions League finals and people like Loris Karius and think, what are you doing? Nah, like.
Yeah, I mean, there are times like that.
Like, I could have said that, or like, do you get those feelings at all? Like, I mean, I remember the game that I think ended Joe Hart's career at the top level was against Scotland, actually, when Lee Griffiths had those 2 free kicks. He bent him over the wall. And his position was absolutely diabolical, hopeless. I reckon you'd have done a better job, Seb. Genuinely, I mean that.
I mean, again, there's this. The difficult thing with it is there's so much that goes into it. I mean, it probably sounds like I'm sticking up for the goalies again, but when you're running around and you're trying to chase the ball and mark your man and stuff like that, it's a lot easier to sort of lose yourself in what you're trying to do. Whereas if you're stood at, if you do let a soft one in and then you don't see the ball for another 10 minutes, it's a mental game then to try and not let that into what you're thinking, because you're standing there going, oh shit, I wish I'd have done that, or wish I'd have done this, or whatever, but then you might not touch the ball again for 10, 15 minutes. So you have to sort of be able to quickly switch back to sort of focusing on the game and how you can affect the next situation. So it's a difficult position, but again, you like to think that managers and coaches and stuff are becoming a lot more educated and a lot more aware of the position and how important it is to have your goalkeeper sort of feeling good and playing well. I think nowadays it's very much a case that coaches and managers do take a bit more interest in what their goalie has to do and be part of the team and things like that, which I think is great, because not only do the goalies learn what the manager wants and what they're required to do in the team, but the managers also learn about their goalies and learn what their sort of challenges are and what their strengths are and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like I think the perception of goalies is that you literally never take your gloves off. Do you wear your gloves in the house when you're buttering toast and all that? Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't tend to. I don't wear my gloves much when I coach. I think that might have to change when football does return, because of all the sort of infection control.
Of course, I
stuff
that.
Like that. So I might have to start wearing them to coach. But I don't. But I do. I mean, Ashley Bayes, the goalie coach at the AFC Wimbledon in the first team now, he used to have a saying, if we get a clean sheet, so mainly when Roscoe's playing, if we get a clean sheet, it was gloves on the pillow tonight. So I'll leave the listeners to interpret that how they want.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that always sort of raised a chuckle on a Saturday if we kept a clean sheet and stuff like that.
I've never ever taken these gloves off. Never, ever at all. Yeah, I'm sure the temptation's there after a good game, but so we have another question actually from James King again. Thank you, James. And I must say, guys, your questions tonight have been absolutely magnificent. Please do keep them coming. We are running out of time, so if you want me to ask Seb anything at all, please get them in now. So James King has came back to ask, what are your top 5 keepers of all time? That's a hard question. Quick, if you can try quick fire off the top of your head, who impulsively spring to mind?
Schmeichel.
Peter Schmeichel.
Schmeichel's probably my favourite goalkeeper.
Yeah.
In terms of his performance, he was obviously the sort of prominent goalie when I was growing up as a kid. At the same time, I had a bit of a I guess it was a torn love between him because of how good he was, and obviously Neil Sullivan, who we talked about earlier, didn't we? Who was obviously, he's got a Scotland connection, but was also born in Sutton and was the Wimbledon goalie at the time that I was a kid. So I used to watch him sort of every week live, and sort of then actually, well, ironically, he came to take my place at AFC Wimbledon in the second season in League Two. So that was a strange football sort of circle of life.
I'll just say that. I mean, if you're watching Neil, you owe Seb a pint.
to be honest with you, seeing I think he was like 41 or 42 at this point, but just seeing him on some of the things that he did on a daily basis at that age, it just made you think. Imagine watching this guy when he was in his prime, like 26, 27. He would have been frightening. He just did some things that you thought, oh my goodness, this guy is another level.
In fairness, I don't know how hard it was to displace Jonathan Gould at the time in the Scotland squad, mind you. But I think it's still quite a commendable effort to get as many caps as he did for Scotland, you know.
Well, he was part of the World Cup squad in '98, wasn't he? I think
it was. Him and Jonathan Gould and Jim Leighton.
But yeah, so those two sort of shared my passion when I was growing up as a goalkeeper. I think in terms of sort of some of the modern day stuff, definitely Manuel Neuer.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I was playing, obviously there's some similarities in terms of how we've looked. We both got blonde hair, but I used to try and watch how he played the game and try and bring elements of that to what I was doing. I'd always as a kid tried to do the sort of sweeper keeper thing, maybe not quite to the levels that he was doing, but seeing someone who was athletically and sort of tactically able to play that as well as he did was he's still, probably less so now, but for probably 5-6 years he's easily the best in the world.
Yeah, I think you say you look Manuel Neuer. Now, I've been told I'm a slightly overweight Jan Vertonghen, so hopefully we can have a decent defence on the rise here. Nah?
That'll never beat the chant I got. I think we were playing Coventry at Kings Meadow, and I got "You're just a fat Joe Hart." So that was a nice shout. So yeah, that's three. I'm trying to think of the other two. I mean, probably moving again a bit too more to the modern day and watching them from a coaching perspective is probably David De Gea.
Yeah.
And Alisson. I mean, David De Gea, when you look at the transformation from when he joined United and sort of his progression when he was throwing goals in and getting bullied at crosses and stuff like that. And to be honest, I've been lucky enough when I did my UEFA B goalkeeping licence.
Yep.
Eric Steele was one of the tutors on it, and he actually did a really interesting presentation on what work they actually did with David De Gea to kind of alleviate some of the problems he was finding. And he talks about the recruitment process and stuff that they went through, and I think he went to something like 25 different games to watch him live, and then they had all the video reports and stuff like this. So a lot of thought and a lot of time and effort went into sort of earmarking him as the next sort of iconic Man United goalie, really, which they talk about the Man United number 7, but I think since sort of Schmeichel, there's a bit of an emphasis on the Man United number 1 as well, because there's obviously that argument they never fully replaced him with someone who could sort of play there for years and years. But and I think with Alisson, again, he's a slightly different breed, and it's just interesting to see the different styles now of goalkeepers in the Premier League and in world football, really. I mean, you look at how he plays the game, and he really sort of has it all. And he's been a big part, I think, of why Liverpool have been so successful since he's been there. And it's easy to overlook that, but they've only really changed him and Van Dijk coming in with the two sort of marquee signings that have really sort of pushed them to that next level. So, I think that's probably 5. I mean, I could probably think in a little bit more depth, but off the top of my head, I think they're probably the 5 that I like to watch the most.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I mean, imagine you're David De Gea. So even back in the day, you're like Massimo Taibbi, I mean, Peter Schmeichel, and you're really highly conditioned athletes, and then you see Andy Gorham walking in on a 3-month contract. That must be soul destroying, thinking, why do I work as hard as I do 9 to 5 every day? So yeah, poor Andy Gorham. But yeah, so
well, I think that was the build in those days, and unfortunately, I think I was more built for that day and age of football than I am for the modern day and age.
Sounds like we're both born in the wrong era.
Yeah, I think it was after my time. Normally it's the other way around, before your time.
Yeah, maybe we can quantum leap to an alternative football universe, but yeah. Until that time machine exists, I will continue this interview. So it's been a pretty fascinating insight into the mind of a goalkeeping coach, let alone the one we will currently have at Sutton United. And I suppose we're just about to wrap up what's been a very interesting conversation we've had. I like to personally round off every single interview I do with anyone really with one key question. So you're stuck in a car on a 10-hour journey up to Thurso in Scotland. So from here up to Thurso, it could even be 15 hours in traffic. So think about this. And you are allowed to pick 3 celebrities, dead or alive, to accompany you. You're in the driving seat, but you need to listen to their chat for 15 hours. Who do you select? 3 celebrities, dead or alive, Seb?
I'm going to keep with the goalkeeping topic a little bit. I'm going to go with Gordon Banks.
Gordon Banks, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go Gordon Banks. I'm going to go Peter Schmeichel, like we've just talked about. And then you've put me in the driving seat, but to look at it from a slightly lazier perspective, me, Bobby, and Kat, when we're going to away games, tend to jump in with Mickey Stevens. I'm going to bring him along to do the driving so that I can pick the brains of Peter Schmeichel and Gordon Banks while Mickey enjoys driving over the Dartford Bridge a million times. But I'm sure he'll get that if he listens.
It sounds like a very, very good eclectic mix of goalkeeping talent there. So across the whole spectrum. So yeah. Well, that's a very interesting mix. It's certainly a little bit different to Ray Davis and the Queen that Mr. Chairman had a few weeks ago. So yeah, well, that's a very interesting insight into the mind of Seb Brown. Seb, I've got to extend a very, very massive thanks to you for coming on the show tonight. It's been a privilege for me personally. We've not actually met yet in person, but I cannot wait for the day we sit down for a pint. I hope that way that the questions weren't too invasive on your.
Brilliant. I really enjoyed it. As I say, it's nice to talk about goalkeeping and talk about yourself for an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe you can interview me next week. So I've got loads of stuff to talk about. So yeah. Well, yeah, that was so again, thanks everyone for tuning in to what's been a very fascinating interview. Thanks to everyone on the live chat for tuning in and asking all the questions. It makes my job much easier. And yes, and finally we say thanks to Seb. So everyone, we tonight clapped for the NHS, and we will continue to do so until this strange time in our lives is all over. And let's hope and pray that day is coming very, very soon. So everyone, from me, Greg Clark, it's been an absolute pleasure to be your host as always. Stay safe, and I'll see you on the other side. Take care.